Today on ELN Morning.
A new swab for the job. With a new weekly record for positive case numbers, ELN tests 5,000 students using a new test.
Fighting to the finish. How the Performing Arts Department is making a last-minute change to the fall musical.
Lions and tigers in quarantine, oh my! How North Carolina zoos are affected by the pandemic.
Today, October 29th, 2020.
This is ELN Morning. Well, good morning and welcome to ELN Morning. I'm Baylor Rodman.
And I'm Isabella Seaman. ELN is using a new coronavirus test this week. The PCR test is created by Radius Labs based outside of Raleigh. And in an email to ELN News Network Chair of the Ready and Resilient Committee, Jeff Stein, says the university plans on using the test at least for the next few weeks. This comes after the university announced its plan to test 5,000 students this week for the virus. According to university spokesman Owen Covington, the new tests cost $89 each. 5,000 of these tests would cost close to $450,000. The old in-person LabCorp test was $150 each. ELN Jr. Keith Schmelter says he's been random tested before by the university. And while the process this week was smooth, the test did feel different.
This one made me almost sneeze a little bit more. It's a little bit softer and goes up a tiny bit more, so I definitely felt the need to sneeze a lot more.
Stein says based on this semester's surveillance testing positivity rate, the university is expecting up to 150 new cases from this week's testing. ELN sophomores Michaela Azque and Claire Ritchie agree that the process was smooth. Ritchie says she's been tested 10 times by the university and does wonder about the accuracy of the on-campus tests.
Kind of just said to barely put it in the nose. So it kind of seems like that wouldn't be super accurate, but then again, I don't really know much about how they get the
I think maybe just because
antibodies.
we do our tests ourselves, that could make it less accurate, which is kind of concerning. But I think for the most part, they instructed us pretty well. So.
Yeah.
Stein says the new PCR test could be used during both winter and spring term, but the university is always looking for a more rapid and accurate test.
And the results from these new tests are already being counted here on campus. ELN reported 54 new cases of the virus yesterday, and university spokesman Owen Covington says results from this week's testing thus far are included in that number. 580 students are in quarantine. That's about 8% of the student body. And today is the first day of course registration for students here on campus. 40 sections of courses this winter term are being categorized as ONL, meaning they are fully remote. All students are able to register for those courses, even if they are not officially approved to be remote for the month. But not all classes are online only. University Registrar Rodney Parks says winter term classes will be a hybrid mix.
You'll have classes that are on campus for students that want to have an on-campus, in-person experience. I suspect majority of the faculty will also broadcast those classes so that you could also be remote. You could be on campus remote. You could be home and be remote.
Students who were previously approved to take classes remotely in both winter term and spring semester began the process yesterday. Park says the goal is to make both terms as normal as possible.
There may be a period of online so that people can quarantine, that come back, where we do some remote. But I think the goal really hasn't changed. You've heard, the president, the provost talk is that we still want to have an on-campus residential experience for students that want to have that.
According to university officials, confirmed operational plans on winter term and spring semester are set to be announced tomorrow.
Some patients who have previously recovered from COVID-19 are now experiencing some long-term symptoms. After testing positive and being cleared by the Alamance County Health Department, ELN sophomore Jacqueline Vogt says she's experiencing extreme fatigue and a constant headache.
In terms of concentrating on my schoolwork and more focus-based tasks, it's harder for me to concentrate on those and really do them the way I would normally do them.
University physician Dr. Jeanette Archinal says data on COVID-19 so far indicates that shortness of breath, inflammation of the heart, kidney complications, migraines, and fatigue are all potential long-term effects of the virus. Archinal says Vogt is experiencing a type of confusion medical professionals are now referring to as a brain fog.
That's a cognitive problem. That's a difficulty focusing in class. That's a difficulty focusing on Zoom. It increases fatigability. And we don't know whether that's permanent. We don't know whether it's progressive. So we don't know whether it'll get worse over time.
Archinal says since this virus is still new, medical professionals don't know how long-term effects will last and which new ones will develop. With increasing cases on campus, Archinal says that each student who has tested positive now has to think about these long-term potential effects.
One industry that's taken a hit during the pandemic are zoos. Despite the impact of the coronavirus, representatives from local zoos say that animal care must continue regardless of the pandemic. Our Ellis Chandler has more.
With limited visitors coming down the zoo's paths these days, the only activity is coming from the animals themselves. Elon alumna Elise Gammon is an education associate at Animal Park at the Conservator Center in Burlington and says zoos still play an important role in educating humans and sparking excitement about animals.
That we think that people will become more passionate about learning about and protecting animals if they've had a real life connection with them. So it's different to say, oh, we would love people to care about tigers or want to protect tigers, but if they really see one and can make eye contact with that animal and learn about it, they may be more driven to want to act more in order to protect that species.
But before quarantine was added to the daily vocabulary of humans, Gammon says new animals coming to the park have always had to isolate. The quarantine process for animals looks similar to that of people.
But we still, our protocols, regardless of the pandemic, are putting that animal on a quarantine and limiting who's able to come near that animal for feeding or other interactions to check in on them to make sure that they don't have anything that could be contaminating our other animals or our people.
The North Carolina Zoo in Asheboro has also felt the impact of the pandemic, according to Public Relations Officer Debbie Foster Fuchs.
You know, even though the zoo wasn't open to the public, that didn't mean things stopped here. We have 1,800 animals that have to be taken care of. So zookeepers coming on site every day. We have 500 acres that have to be taken care of. So our horticulture staff was busy every day, whether guests were there or not.
Both zoos say they are interested to see how their new programs progress as restrictions hopefully begin to lift. But for now, they are continuing to care for the animals. Ellis Chandler, ELN Morning.
To read more about how the coronavirus is impacting North Carolina zoos, pick up a copy of this week's Pendulum.
See if showers will stick around after the break.
Start a story. Adopt at theshelterpetproject.org.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The National Weather Service has issued a tropical storm warning for our area through this afternoon, with high sustained and gusty winds being the greatest impact we will probably see in our area.
And for more on the week ahead, now is our Isabel Gouveia joins us live on Citron Plaza. Isabel, what can you tell us about this Halloween weekend?
Thank you, Baylor and Bella in the studio. As you can see behind me, we are dealing with the remnants of Tropical Storm Zeta, which has passed over the Carolinas and will move into Virginia earlier this afternoon. Expect rain and heavy winds throughout the rest of the afternoon, with the rain ceasing later this evening and clouds forming overnight. Moving into our 5-day Phoenix forecast. Cooler temperatures Temperatures will rise as we head into the high 60s and low 70s late this week. Halloween will be a brisk one with the nightly temperature reaching the low 40s, so be sure to bundle up over those costumes. There is a chance of light rain and clouds early on Sunday, but clear skies and sun should present itself into early next week. Almost freezing temperatures at night, so grab those jackets and stay warm. It looks like we will have a mixed bag of weather this week. Stay prepared, and back to you, Baylor and Bella in the studio.
All right, Isabel Gouveia live on Citron Plaza. Isabel, thank you.
And if you look up at the sky this Halloween night, something might look a little bit different. Professor of Astronomy Anthony Kreider says there will be a full moon on Halloween in all time zones for the first time since 1944. However, the hurricane could affect the visibility of the moon. Every full moon on Halloween is also a blue moon, which occurs roughly every 2.5 years when 2 full moons fall into the same month.
Almost white overhead. But you almost never see the moon looking blue. It won't be blue or shouldn't be blue that night unless there's a disaster that makes it look that way. But we just call it blue in terms of, from an old farmer's almanac that called it that.
The next full moon on Halloween will be in 2039. To the screen, how ELN Performing Arts is getting ready to showcase the fall musical.
I rescued Toast from a shelter in 2011. I love Toast because she's a lazy diva. Toast does whatever she wants, obviously. She's sleeping right now. She's an epic snuggler. She's so comforting. She's so loving. Toast makes me laugh. When I walked into the shelter, I knew right then that she was special.
Tonight was supposed to be the opening night of the fall musical Beast Mode Champion, but due to the coronavirus pandemic, it's the second weekend of filming. Our Kaylee Satani has more.
Stand by.
Standing. Action.
As the cast and crew navigate a performance during a pandemic, there's new guidelines they must factor in, including creating individual dressing rooms, wearing masks during scenes, and filming a performance outside in a tent. Director of the musical, Kirby Wall, says that he and the production team were aware of potential challenges heading into rehearsals.
This is a musical about wrestling, which is hard to do if there's no wrestling, right? And we knew that there was Corona when we agreed to do it.
While they were always working under strict guidelines, it was back to the drawing board once the university moved into level 3. Wall began storyboarding the show and mapping out the angles for shooting each scene.
We recently decided, okay, we're going to see the little strap behind the ear sometimes. We really can't avoid that. But I think we've got a good plan for telling this fun and very timely story.
ELN sophomore Shayo Oni is one of 10 company members and says singing outside or with a mask is a struggle, but appreciates having more than one take.
If this were a stage production, we would have to get everything perfect right then and there, whereas in this dynamic, we can go back and fix things.
ELN sophomore JD Grant is working with the musical's production team and says the pandemic brought an increased sense of community to those involved.
And this is also the kind of hidden blessing, I guess, of the pandemic in a certain sense, is that it's forced us to become more creative and it allows more students to get involved.
Kaylee Satani, ELN Morning.
The virtual performance will be available at elonperformingarts.com beginning on November 20th.
And that's all the news we have for you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us. For all the news you need to know when we are not on the air, be sure to check out our website, elonnewsnetwork.com.
And be sure to follow us on social media at ELN News Network. Stay safe and healthy and have a great weekend, ELN.